Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. This program is for educational purposes only. The statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Testimonials are shared as individual experiences of the individual sharing their testimony. Results vary and may not be typical. We do not make any claims regarding health or income. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We are honored to have a founding father of the science of epigenetics guiding us with the best options to obtain or maintain optimal health, Dr. Joel Wallach. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmacist Fridays on Daily with Doc. My name is Becca Dukes. So excited to be back with you today as we're going to be bringing more empowering information that talks about things that you may not think about, or you may see it and then wonder, well, why? That's what this program is all about, is answering those questions. As Daily with Doc is sponsored by dailywithdoc.com. We are a resource for an amazing community. So if somebody referred you, make sure that you get back with them with any questions that you may have. Now, this is a live audience. So if you have questions, you'd like to be part of the live audience, make sure that you go to zoom.dailywithdoc.com. Monday through Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. Pacific time. When you join us, make sure that you are watching that waiting room, because if we don't have a show or we're showing a revisit because we think it's that important, we will put that up on the screen so that you're not just hanging out waiting for us to start, and you can go to your favorite to watch video or listen to podcasts, as we are on, I think, almost all of them. Look for Daily with Doc, or just Daily with Doc, and we will come up. Daily with Doc and Becca. All right, well, today we do have Pharmacist Ben Fuchs on with us once again. At the end of the show, if we have time, we will be doing some questions. So if you're here live with us, make sure that you raise your hand so that we know that you have a question, and I will be calling on people in the order that their hands are raised. Now, this program is meant for educational purposes, folks, so make sure that you're taking great notes. And if you're live with us, make sure that chat is on, because if you can't take notes fast enough, Marilyn can, and she'll put them in the chat for you so you can take screenshots or see what was said and write it down based on what she was able to capture. So, folks, without further ado, my name is Becca Dukes. I'm the hostess and producer of this show. I am also the Director of Student Services for the Institute of Holistic Health, where we teach people just like you about the 4 areas of health, how they're affected by nutritional deficiencies, and solutions. But we don't stop there, as we look at life as a whole and help you find what it needs to make a more holistic, optimal life. So today we are going to have Pharmacist Ben Fuchs. Hello, Pharmacist Ben. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank
how
you.
How do you like my disco shirt?
Well, you're going to have to lean back so that I can see it. Oh, there you go. That looks sharp.
Shirt from the 70s. You like
I
that?
I like it.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. That means a lot to me, Becca.
Well, Pharmacist Ben, you're just a styling guy. So
I am a styling guy. I've been called that. Yes.
You're not only smart and handsome, you're styling, and
The whole package.
You love to empower people.
I do love to empower people. That's really that's what this whole thing is about. It's not about nutrition. Nutrition is only important as far as it empowers people. If nutrition didn't empower people, it wouldn't be relevant. It's really all about empowerment. And interestingly, when we talk about nutrition, there's such a thing as spiritual nutrition, mental nutrition, emotional nutrition, as well as physical nutrition. And you want to be feeding yourself spiritually correct molecules, information. You want to be feeding yourself mentally and emotionally correct molecules or information. And even today, there's a thing called information medicine. Have you heard of this? Information
No.
medicine. Information medicine is a whole new field of medicine that talks about using information, whether it's facts like we're talking about or chemical information. You know, biochemistry is really about information. Cells do what they do based on signals, which can be thought of as a type of information. You know what the opposite of information is?
Disinformation.
Distant.
No, that's a type of information.
So
who out there knows the opposite of information?
What's the opposite of information, folks? I know we've got some smart
anybody
people
out there?
in the room.
Becca's going to give a freebie on Tangy Tangerine to anybody who knows the opposite of information. I know somebody's going to go out there and Google it, so we can't really do that.
So ignorance?
No.
No information? Lack of information? Wait, you got muted.
The opposite.
Okay, somebody please stop unmuting him.
Why am I getting muted here?
I'm not quite sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The opposite of information is noise.
Oh.
Information is literally information. It's when something has a structure, when something has formation. So, information is something that is in a form, in formation. And so the body is actually information. It's in a form. And what makes a healthy body is when it's in a form as opposed to when it's out of form. Disease is when the body's out of form, when it loses its structure. And this is what aging is about. We lose our structure. I was teasing, I think the last time, I don't know if you're on, I said it blobifies. The body blob. I don't know if you're on. Blobification is a type of lack of formation, loses information. Information medicine is helping the body stay informed. And so anytime you present information, what you're doing is you're taking chaos and noise and giving it a structure. The body is the ultimate form of biological structure, and the cells itself are the unit of structure, if you will. And as we get older, as we age, as the disease process kicks in, cells lose formation. They blobify. They break down. They become noise as opposed to information. What nutrition does is it organizes. It structures. The reason nutrition is so important, whether it's macronutrients or micronutrients, is it puts the body back in form. It informs the body, puts the body back into an information. It makes the body in formation. Healthy bodies are in formation. They're in a structure. They're in a shape. So that's what nutrition is all about. Nutrition is information molecules. Information medicine is about putting the body back in information and recognizing the disease state as a body that's lacking form, lacking structure, blobifying. So anyway, that's what information is about. All information, it puts something into a structure. And so when you get a piece of data or information, if you will, in your brain actually takes a structure. It actually takes on a form. Synapses are formed and branches are created, and neurological pathways and circulatory pathways take structure. So that happens every time we learn something. And in fact, we get rewarded for learning something. When we learn something, our body takes on formation, we get a hit of dopamine, and we feel really good about ourselves. And that's why presumably everybody is on this call to get little hits of dopamine so that they can actually be rewarded or get the pleasant experiences of having their brain structured or brain information. So today we're going to talk about one of my favorite molecules, informational molecules, information molecules. And this is literally a molecule that puts the body information. And that is, Becca?
Sulfate.
Sulfate. I don't remember why we were talking about sulfate, but I wanted to discuss that. Have you heard about, in skincare, they say sulfate free?
Yes.
Have you ever heard that term, sulfate free? What is that about, sulfate free?
Well, sulfate's a mineral.
Not quite. Sulfur is a mineral, but
sulfur's a mineral.
Sulfur is a mineral, but sulfate is a form of salt. It's a complex form of sulfur. It's sulfur and oxygen, technically. Sulfate is sulfur surrounded by oxygen. Sulfur is the key element in sulfate, but when it gets surrounded by oxygen, it becomes electrified. And so sulfate has an electrical property that makes it extremely valuable. The body activates and deactivates things via electrification. And electrification occurs not randomly. There's no electricity being flowing through the body in a random way. It's carried on various molecules, one of which is called sulfate. Technically, sulfate is said to be an electrolyte. In any case, sulfate has a structuring property and does many, many things in the body. One of the things that sulfate does is it's a major, major player in detoxification, particularly of detoxification of estrogen, as well as detoxification of those nasty chemicals that get into the bloodstream through a leaky gut, as well as detoxification of various environmental pollutants like xenoestrogens, for example. Sulfate works by, and this is kind of a fundamental detoxification strategy in the body, by making things dissolve in water. Toxins are toxic largely because they're sticky. Remember, the distinction between fat and water is stickiness. Go back to our peanut butter and jelly analogy. You got peanut butter and jelly on a knife, you put it in the water. What goes off first? What goes off, actually? Not the peanut butter, the jelly.
The jelly.
Peanut butter is fatty, so it's sticky. This is what makes fats problematic. Do you ever get oil on a shirt or on your pants? An oil, you spill salad oil or something on something oily in your pants. You can't get it out. You can't wash it out. It sticks. You got to go to a dry cleaners to get that out. If it was watery, it would come out. You get jelly on your pants, on your nice white shirt. Let's say you get jelly on your nice white shirt. The jelly will come out, but the red or the orange or whatever the color of the jelly is, that will stay. Because the color, the pigments tend to be fatty. Pigments are fatty. And this is one of the reasons why you always want to braise your vegetables or somehow steam or heat your vegetables lightly, not heavily, because that releases the pigments. They're very hard to pull out of the veggies, pigments being fatty. One of the ways the body will detoxify substances or eliminate toxins, I should say, is by making them more water soluble. Toxins tend to be fatty. They stick into fatty tissue. And this idea of toxins being in fat is very problematic because the more body fat you're carrying, the more toxic you're going to be. So toxins being stored in fat makes them especially problematic because they're sticky. Fats are sticky. Toxins don't come out. So the body has a way of making toxins water soluble. So they're less toxic, they're less sticky, and they escape or they leave or they're eliminated, I should say, more readily from the body. And one of those mechanisms is to make those fatty substances, those toxins, more water soluble. And guess what it uses to make, among other things, one of the things it uses to make those toxins more water soluble is, drumroll, sulfate. Exactly. And this is one of sulfate's major properties. It makes fats more water soluble. So that means it's going to be crucial for detoxification. It's going to be crucial for the removal of what are called xenobiotics, i.e. toxins, heavy metals, environmental pollutants, xenoestrogens, etc. And then sulfate is also very important for the body's major emulsifier. An emulsifier is something that makes fatty things more water soluble. And of course, that's bile. And sulfate plays a very important role in the formation of bile, which itself is probably the body's most important detoxifying chemical or liquid, bile. And then probably, or one of the most, I won't say the most important role for sulfate in terms of detoxification is its ability to help detoxify estrogen, as well as cortisol and testosterone and other steroid hormones. Sulfation of estrogen, sulfation of testosterone, sulfation of the steroid hormones helps inactivate them, deactivate them, and facilitates their removal. So the first very important role for sulfate is in detoxification, whether it's in making substances more water soluble or supporting the synthesis of bile or in detoxifying hormones. Then another very important place for sulfate is in joints. And that's why you see things like chondroitin sulfate and glucosamine sulfate, because sulfate is a very important part of These molecules like chondroitin and glucosamine, which are technically called GAGs, without getting into too much chemistry, glycosaminoglycans. And sulfate plays a very important role in helping GAGs act as lubricating substances. The chondroitin and the glucosamine that we take orally when we have arthritis helps lubricate our joints by virtue of its sulfate. Sulfate's electrical properties allow it to interact with water and to create slimy substances. And these slimy substances are one of the reasons why joints have a lubricious quality, a smooth quality. When joints lose their slimy quality, as in sulfate deficiency or in glucosamine deficiencies or GAG deficiencies in general, joint lubricity suffers, and that's when we start to get what they call bone on bone or arthritis or pain or immobility, which is extremely common. Sulfate is very important for in that regard. And that's one of the reasons why, by the way, why glucosamine sulfate is a superior form of glucosamine than the other forms of glucosamine you'll see sometime, which is glucosamine hydrochloride. So sulfate is important for creating lubricity in the joints, for allowing GAGs or GAGs to interact with water or maintain water. And in fact, sulfates have an ability to organize water, not just react with water, but actually structure water. We've talked about structured water in the past, and one of the reasons why water can maintain a structure is by its interaction with sulfates. Sulfate is also very important for communication. Proteins and other molecules will actually get sulfated to make them more stable and allow them to interact electronically with other molecules, particularly receptors in cells. And this isn't only true about general proteins, but it's also true about growth factors and, in fact, various factors. Growth factors are only one type of factor. Whenever you hear the word factor, you're talking about a very simple protein. I don't even know if it's officially a protein, more like a peptide. But in any case, sulfation of these factors makes them allows them to communicate more effectively to the cells, makes them more communication friendly, I guess you could say. And then sulfate also activates, we talked about deactivating hormones, it also activates hormones. For example, you may have heard of DHEA sulfate, which is the most abundant of the circulating steroids in the body. DHEA is an extremely valuable steroid hormone that we don't really hear anywhere near enough about, in my opinion. And supplemental DHEA is pretty, it would be an intelligent thing for everybody to supplement with, even though I don't know that we have any in longevity, any DHEA sulfate, because DHEA is kind of a hormone. And I think the philosophy is that the longevity business stays away from hormones. DHEA is a hormone that you can actually buy in the health food store. And then sulfates are also important for breaking down and controlling and regulating neurotransmitters, brain chemicals. Sulfate is important for various neurotransmitters like serotonin and epinephrine and adrenaline. And then sulfation is very important for the production of mucus in the gut, in the intestine, particularly deficiencies in sulfate can lead to deficiencies in the mucosal lining, or at least have an impact on the mucosal lining that can be associated with inflammation as well as leaky gut. And then sulfate molecules also play a role in communication with the gut microbiome. So you can see there's a ton of different things that sulfates do in the body, and sulfate deficiency can cause a whole wide range of health problems. Sulfate deficiency can worsen mental health issues via the neurotransmitter impact or the deficiencies in neurotransmitters. It can affect GI health, gastrointestinal health. Sulfate deficiency is also associated with cardiovascular disease. One of the most interesting places where sulfate's water soluble ability to improve water solubility of fats comes into play is in cholesterol. Cholesterol sulfate is a water-soluble form of cholesterol. Deficiencies in cholesterol sulfate can make cholesterol more sticky, and this may be one of the reasons why cholesterol gets the bad reputation it does. It might not be the cholesterol, but it might be a deficiency in cholesterol sulfate. Impaired sulfate metabolism can also affect the lining of the blood vessels, because the blood vessels are also composed of these GAGs, glycosaminoglycans, that sulfate is so important for. And there are actually researchers who believe that autoimmune diseases can be associated with sulfate deficiency. As we talked about before with detoxification, sulfate deficiencies can also cause problems with detox. And sulfate is a very important detoxification molecule. Sulfate also is important for helping maintain the structure, the form, if you will, of various types of connective tissue in the body. Deficiencies in sulfate cause defects in connective tissue. And sulfate deficiency is unfortunately not uncommon, and that is because of sulfur deficiencies. Interestingly, sulfur is one of the most abundant molecules on Earth, in the Earth, but sulfur deficiency is not all that uncommon, and sulfur deficiencies can lead to sulfate deficiencies. The most important places where you get sulfur, by the way, is in from a dietary perspective, is in sulfur amino acids, particularly amino acids that are found in meat, like methionine and cysteine. And if you're jumping ahead a little bit, you'll see that N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, which is one of my all-time favorite nutritional supplements, is a wonderful source of sulfur. And the sulfur in NAC is one of the reasons why NAC has such a great reputation for being a detox molecule. In fact, NAC is so important for detoxification that it's actually kept in emergency rooms for injection right into the bloodstream when people have Tylenol poisoning or aspirin poisoning, or when they overdose on something. Lack of sulfate can also cause an increase in cartilage breakdown and can be associated with arthritis. And this is one of the reasons why just taking things like glucosamine may not be enough to help you with your arthritis. And you might want to consider using your ultimate MSM, which of course will give you sulfur, which can then get turned into sulfate. Sulfate deficiencies can also lead to hormone problems. And this is one reason why it's not always the best idea, if you're dealing with hormone deficiencies, just to take the hormone. For example, if you're missing sulfate and you try to take estrogen, you may end up not getting the benefits of the estrogen, or conversely, you may get too much effects of estrogen, because sulfate is not only important for activating things, it's also important for deactivating things. So biological sulfate is critical for a whole bunch of factors of health processes in the body. And the best way to get sulfate is going to be, number one, by eating enough sulfur, either supplementally or by getting sulfur amino acids. One of my favorite amino acids, by the way, that has sulfur in it is taurine, which has some really interesting skin properties, and sulfate is very important for the skin. Activation of sulfate, by the way, can be accomplished by the sun. And this is one of the reasons why you want to make sure that you're getting a little bit of sun every day, despite the fact that the sun has been demonized. The sun is very important for activation of sulfate. Sulfate being having this electrical property, it accomplishes or gains its electricity through the photonic energy, the solar energy that comes at us from the sun. And in fact, the skin is one of the, obviously the largest organ in the body, is one of the most important places where sulfur plays a role, or sulfate, I should say, plays a role, not only in terms of cholesterol in the skin, but also skin cells themselves are very dependent on sulfur, which plays a role in how skin cells shapeshift as they rise from the bottom to the top. Quick digression here. Skin cells are born in the bottom of the skin and they rise up to the top. And as they're rising up to the top, they create moisture factors. And this is how the skin is supposed to stay moist. It's supposed to stay moist by virtue of the molecules that are produced as skin cells rise from the bottom to the top. And it turns out that sulfate plays a major role in supporting the movement of skin cells from the bottom to the top, which means sulfate also has an ability to support skin moisturization. And it's very possible that sulfur deficiency or sulfate deficiency is at least partially associated with our epidemic of xerosis, i.e. dry skin, that people suffer from in this country, despite the fact that we spend $10 billion in moisturizing products. Everybody has dry skin, and it could very well be at least partially associated with sulfur deficiency or sulfate deficiency. Sulfate is also involved in inflammation. Sulfate has anti-inflammatory properties, and things like heparan sulfate, which is a GAG, glycosaminoglycan, plays an important role in anti-inflammation. It's also sulfate is also important in wound healing by virtue of its anti-inflammatory properties. And this is one of the reasons why fucoidan is so beneficial for healing. Whenever you hear about fucoidan, what you don't hear about is the sulfate component of fucoidan. Fucoidan itself is valuable, but when it's sulfated, fucoidan sulfate, in other words, you get all the wonderful properties of sulfate. And this is one of the reasons why fucoidan, or the Fucoid Z, is such a valuable nutritional supplement. Sulfate compounds in the skin also play a role in supporting the health of the microbiome on the skin, and sulfated molecules in the skin are also important for defense, and deficiencies in sulfate can change the skin microbiome, and they can also play a role in skin inflammatory diseases, particularly eczema, as well as accelerated aging of the skin. And this is also a place where sulfated cholesterol, as we talked about earlier, plays a role. Sulfated cholesterol is a more water-soluble form of cholesterol, and it plays a really important role, not just in sulfate and cholesterol isn't only important for liquefying cholesterol or helping cholesterol travel through the body more effectively, but it also has a water binding property that can support skin hydration. So skin hydration, the attraction of water to the skin, can be supported by the sulfate content of the skin. And in that way, getting yourself out in the sun can actually be helpful for skin hydration by supporting the production of sulfate. And then sulfate's ability to communicate cells also is important for helping cells skin cells, that is, talk to each other, communicate to each other, because skin cells are moving so rapidly, their ability to communicate with each other plays a major role in how healthy your skin will be. One of the places, we talked about how sulfate deficiency is somewhat common because of soil deficiencies and lack of intake of either nutritional sulfur or dietary sulfur. Another place where sulfate deficiency can be created is from the nasty pesticide called glyphosate, which disrupts the production of sulfate in the body. So glyphosate, by the way, is a water-soluble pesticide, which means it's in the rain and it's in the water supply. And pretty much whether you're eating organic or you're trying to eat glyphosate free, pretty much everybody's going to have some degree of glyphosate in their body simply because it's in the water supply. Glyphosate can actually disrupt the production of sulfate. Among other things, glyphosate also has an ability to chelate or magnetically attract minerals like copper and molybdenum and cobalt, which is important for making vitamin B12. Glyphosate also can impair the production of certain enzymes, particularly enzymes that are involved in sulfation. All of these may play a role in heart disease, and this is according to the work of a researcher named Stephanie Seneff, who you may have heard of. And she proposes that sulfate deficiency is one of the reasons why we have sticky cholesterol, which is associated with cholesterol, which folks associate with heart disease. It may not be the cholesterol. It may be a deficiency in cholesterol sulfate that is the problem. And I'm not saying yay or nay on that, but that at least is Dr. Seneff's proposal. So if you want to increase the amount of sulfate in your body, eat sulfur. Whether you're eating sulfur in the form of methionine and cysteine, or you're eating sulfur in the form of MSM, which is nutritional sulfur, or one of the best places to get sulfur to make sulfate is from the most medicinal class of vegetables there is, which is the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and kale and let's see what else here. Forgot the other ones. There's quite a few of these: broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, cabbage. I think there's a couple more that I'm forgetting about. But cruciferous vegetables in general have a reputation for being important for female health because they contain molecules like DIM and I3C, both of which you can buy as supplements, by the way, but they're also found in broccoli. But the sulfur content is also important for female health issues, as well as for all the things that sulfate do. that sulfates do that we just talked about. These sulfate, another way to improve sulfate metabolism or sulfate synthesis is by eating fermented foods. Kefir, yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, all of these will support a healthy microbiome, and sulfate is actually produced by bacteria in the intestine. Along the same lines, prebiotics like fiber and FOS and inulin, all of these can help support a healthy microbiome, which in turn will support healthy production of sulfate. And if you're dealing with dysbiosis, disruptions in gut bacteria, it's probably a good idea to consider restoring your bacterial population back to its healthy state by using things like the I-26, perhaps, as well as working upstream with digestive enzymes and apple cider vinegar or something to acidify those enzymes to improve sulfate. And then we mentioned MSM, but there's also something called magnesium sulfate, i.e. Epsom salts. And Epsom salts baths can actually, at least according to some folks, improve sulfate in the body, improve sulfate levels in the body by virtue of its ability to get absorbed through the skin. And it's a little bit controversial, but there is some pretty good literature that supports the idea of the absorption of sulfate and magnesium sulfate through the skin via Epsom salt baths. You can also improve detoxification in the liver. That will also be important for the production of sulfate, reducing your intake of liver toxins, which of course include alcohol, as well as drugs, both prescription drugs and illegal drugs. And then there are supportive foods that you can eat, mostly antioxidant supportive foods, which can help support sulfates. And reducing your exposure to toxins will help spare your sulfates, so they're not going to necessarily be used for detoxification by minimizing your exposure to xenoestrogens or xenobiotics or foreign molecules, poison molecules. Stress levels, sleep levels, the usual suspects, exercise, all can improve sulfate levels. And as I mentioned before, getting yourself out in the sun. Don't be a heliophobe. Don't be afraid of the sun. Make sure that you're getting enough sunshine, and by enough sunshine, it kind of depends on your skin coloration, on your pigment, but certainly 10 or 15 minutes a day of some good strong sun, 2 or 3 times a week minimum, is not going to cause damage, and it's probably going to be good for you for a lot of reasons. Don't be a heliophobe. Don't be afraid of the sun. And then, interestingly, when the skin is more hydrated, it's going to be easier for it to produce sulfate. When you have a more intact skin barrier, number one, and when water is more present in the skin, when you minimize water loss, what they call TEWL, transepidermal water loss, you'll be more likely to make more sulfate in the skin. So sulfate is good stuff, whether it's because it sulfates cholesterol, whether it supports detoxification, whether it supports the activation of various molecules, and also because sulfate helps create water-soluble molecules and supports the water solubility of cholesterol. It's also important for skin health, as we said. There's all kinds of reasons why sulfate is important. Make sure you're eating your sulfur amino acids. Make sure you're eating sulfur-containing vegetables. And we really do have to go out of our way to do that, even though, as I say, sulfur is found pretty ubiquitously in the environment. For whatever reason, sulfur deficiency is not all that uncommon. MSM is a great supplement that you can use. Longevity's got a great MSM supplement if you want to support your natural sulfate levels. And then don't forget to make sure that you're getting plenty of sunshine. And I think that's it. That's all I want to say about sulfate. So anytime somebody tells you about sulfate-free on their skincare or on their shampoos, you say back to them, oh yeah, well, sulfate is really, really important. So what the heck are you talking about? What's the big deal with sulfate-free?
So
Yes.
so how about like, is it SLS?
Well, let me say one more thing about sulfate. Sulfate being highly electrical is a great way to support electrical energy, the delivery of little pieces of electricity called negative ions, i.e. electrons, to the body. So it will actually, using sulfate or ingesting sulfate, helping the body build sulfate, will actually improve electrification of the body. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So sodium lauryl sulfate.
Yes, sodium is a positive charge. Mm-hmm. Sulfate's a negative charge. and
Okay.
laurel's fat. Laurel is short for is a derivative of lauric acid, which is a fatty acid. So laurel's a fat, right? Work with me here. Laurel's a fat. Fats don't really move through the body very well. But if fats have an electrical charge with a sodium, which has a positive charge, and a sulfate, which has a negative charge, now that laurel becomes very interesting. It's not just a fat. Now it's a fat that you can rinse off. And when you have a fat that you can rinse off, you have an ideal cleanser. Do you want to know why?
Yes, I do want to know why, because I thought it would be drying.
Well, I'll tell you why they say it's drying. That's true. It is drying. But let me, this is kind of an interesting idea. Laurel's a fat. Sulfate has a negative charge.
Mm-hmm.
Sodium has a positive charge. Wherever you have a negative charge, nature will always put a positive charge. Negative and positive go together. So in order to stabilize that negative charge, you got to have a positive charge somewhere there. So basically what you've done is you've electrified a fat. You made a fat water soluble. When you make a fat water soluble, it becomes the ideal cleanser. A water soluble fat is an ideal cleanser. Why would a water soluble fat be an ideal cleanser?
Because it's getting all of the oil and dirt and grime and everything.
Exactly. The oil and the oil and the dirt and the grime tend to be fatty. This is why if you just wash your face with water, you can't really clean your face because water and fatty don't mix. Water and oil don't mix. Dirt tends to be fatty. That's why it sticks to your skin. If dirt weren't fatty, the kind of dirt and grime that people wash their face, makeup is another example of stuff that's fatty that sticks on your skin. Remember, fats stick, water doesn't. So dirt is problematic because it sticks to your hair and to your face. But if you could take a fat and mix it with the fat in your skin, but that fat is water soluble, that fat will then rinse everything away. And so soap is a classic example of a water soluble fat. How do you make soap? You take fat and you make it water soluble. Sodium lauryl sulfate is a type of soap. But because it's liquid, it's a very special kind of soap that you can use in shampoos and in liquid face washes. In fact, these days we're very used to the ideas of liquid cleansers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see all these liquid cleansers, bath gels, shower gels. Well, when they were first invented, probably in the 1940s or so, 1950s, that was a revolutionary idea because prior to that, you had to have bar soap. But when they figured out how they could make artificial soap, if you will, or synthetic soap, they call them syndets, synthetic detergents. When they figured out how to do that by taking fat and mixing it with sulfate, that was a revolution. All of a sudden, you didn't need bar soap. Today, we're very used to the ideas of these gels and shower gels and bath gels and things that'll clean you that aren't necessarily soap. But when they first were invented, they were like high technology because all of a sudden they could take a fat, mix it with electrical sulfate, and throw in a sodium, and now you had a liquid or you had a fat that could dissolve in water. And that makes the perfect cleanser. Now, you asked another question. You said, why is it that they're drying? And that is the knock on these things. And the reason they're drying is because it's very difficult to just remove the dirt without removing the good oils. Your skin has good oils on it that keep it hydrated. Your skin has a raincoat on it that protects it protects the skin from dehydrating. When you wash with soap or wash with sodium lauryl sulfate, as you pointed out, you can't just isolate the dirt. You also get removal of the lipids, the fats in the skin. And this is what accounts for the drying nature. And this is really why things like sodium lauryl sulfate have such a bad rap. Not because they're specifically toxic, but because they can, just like they get rid of the bad dirt, the bad oils, they get also, which is the dirt, they also get rid of the good oils. But sodium lauryl sulfate itself is no worse than any other soap or any other cleanser. And whenever you hear sulfate free, you're hearing scam rich. Sulfate-free equals scam rich. And what they did, and it's not really a scam, but what it is it takes advantage of people's misunderstanding or non-understanding of how chemistry works. And they just listen to memes and listen to marketing. Sulfates are no harsher than any other cleanser, any other type of cleanser. And the reason they're harsh is because of what we just said, how they remove the good lipids as well as the bad lipids. Good lipids being the good stuff, the lipids, the fats in the skin that keep it soft and moist and hydrated, in addition to the bad lipids, which is where the dirt and the grime and the makeup and all the things you want to get rid of your skin. You can't just get rid of the bad oils, you get rid of the good oils too. One more thing I want to say about sulfate that makes it very important. This is what I talk about almost always when I talk about fucoidan. And again, just to reiterate, many of the benefits of fucoidan are due to its sulfate content, and sulfate's ability to interact with water makes it very important for liquefying the blood. Remember, sulfate's going to have a liquefying effect. It's going to have give them the molecule, whether it's cholesterol sulfate or heparin sulfate or keratin sulfate or fucoidan sulfate or glucosamine sulfate, whatever that sulfate's attached to, is going to become more water soluble. And it's going to allow water to flow more effectively, or water substances to flow more effectively, and that includes blood. And because dirty blood is behind all chronic degenerative disease, and when I say dirty blood, I mean sluggish, clogged, sticky, coagulated, clotted blood, sulfates, whether they're on fucoidan or whether they're on glucosamine or whether they're on heparin, have an ability to improve blood fluidity, which will in turn improve the delivery of oxygen, nutrition, and support detoxification of the blood, which will support overall health. So if I haven't made a case for sulfate and the importance of sulfate and how relevant sulfate is for good health, as well as sulfur, which is the most important molecule in sulfate, I don't know how else I could do that.
Okay, so I'm in the process of moving to an area that has a sulfur smell in the water. Do I need to be concerned about that?
Well, it depends on the form of sulfur. That gets a little bit tricky, but no, you don't have to be. I wouldn't be concerned about it because it's in water, which means it's going to be a water-soluble form of sulfate. So no, sulfur is not a bad thing. Now, sulfur smell, which you're referring to sulfur smell, can be associated with rotting or putrefying proteins. Remember, one of the most prominent places where sulfur is found is in amino acids, like methionine and cysteine, which are found, for example, in eggs. And so when the eggs deteriorate, i.e. rot, that sulfur smell could be a sign of putrefaction or of rotting. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the case in the bacteria, in the water. However, if the sulfur smell is coming from bacteria, that could be a problem because that could mean that water is contaminated. So it kind of depends on where that sulfur is coming from. It's not the sulfur itself, however, that is the problem.
All right. Well, I'm going to be testing my water as soon as I get there, just so I know. We have hands up, Pharmacist Ben, and we want to make sure
that was a lot of chemistry. I hope that was not
a lot.
I hope that's not too hard for anybody to understand. Just remember, sulfate's good stuff. You need it.
Well,
and see, that's get out in the sun.
Yeah, that's the most important part of this, folks. Yes. Is you're going to be hearing information that is backed by science, not a meme.
Not a meme. That's right.
Not a meme. Exactly. So,
it's funny about memes. Memes have become like internet memes now, but really a meme is a virus, a mind virus. And that's very important to understand because viruses don't care about you. They just want to spread. That's the problem with the virus. They don't care about the vector, i.e. us. They care, or the vector means the spreader. They care about spreading. And that's the problem with viruses, whether they're viruses in your computer, viruses in your biological viruses in your body, or mind viruses, which arguably are the worst viruses of all.
Well, in digital marketing, there's a lot of things that get put out there, and we want to make sure that what we're putting out is truth, folks, empowering you to make decisions on what goes in your body or on your skin or in your environment in general for optimal health. Pharmacist Ben, fantastic talk on sulfates today. I think that's going to blow a lot of people out of the water because of that bandwagon of sulfate free.
Sulfate free, right. You don't hear about it
Yeah.
quite as much as a few years ago, but you still do hear it.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of skincare, a lot of hair products, all of them
They still
saying,
say it, sulfate
yep,
free.
they still say it. Still say it. All right. Well, let's go to, I think it's Lisa. Lisa, thank you so much for being so patient. You've had your hand up since the beginning. Can you unmute yourself? And what questions do you have today?
Oh, thank you. Really good talk on sulfates. Thank you.
Yo.
Never heard of that before, so I think that'll help us. My husband has possibly Parkinson's or Parkinsonians, but his question is actually, we've kind of gone through some of the products that you have, but his question actually is what makes Prostate better than taking Cipla and also natural saw palmetto?
I'm having a really hard time hearing you, Lisa.
And
What make tell me those two things that you said compared to each other?
Cipla, which is not natural. No? Hold on.
Uroxetrol.
Uroxetrol, sorry. He just corrected me.
Say again?
Uroxetrol.
Okay, uroxetrol as opposed to what?
And he also is taking saw palmetto.
This is for Parkinson's?
No, this is just a question, and I'm letting you know that he has that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It wouldn't make any difference. And then it'll also, and so he wants to know what makes the Prostate, the product with longevity, better than taking those things.
Okay, so first of all, there's no better or worse except for when you take uroxetrol, you're taking a drug that poisons the nervous system, which is connected to the muscles. So uroxetrol works by relaxing muscles in the prostate, which in turn improves the flow of urine. When you have a prostate issue, urine flow is blocked, partially or to one extent or another, depending on how bad the prostate is inflamed. So urine flow is impaired. What uroxetrol does is they say relaxes the muscles. They call it an alpha blocker, which means it blocks the nerves, the alpha nerves, they call them, that are attached to the muscles. This relaxes the muscles. Now, when you say relaxing the muscles, that sounds great, except the problem is what they don't tell you. They use this euphemism, relaxes the muscles. But if you understand the biochemistry, you can substitute the word relax for poisons the muscles. When you relax your muscles, you go, that's a good thing. When you take a poison that relaxes your muscles, you're poisoning your body. Now, the alternative to uroxetrol is, now, I know ProstFX. I'm not sure, I didn't quite hear what you were saying. The name of the drug, or the name of the longevity supplement you were taking.
Saw palmetto.
No, the name of the product, not the herb. Did you mention a name?
Cipla brand.
It's a Cipla brand.
Cipla brand?
Uroxetrol.
Rebecca, I don't know what that is. Can you spell that?
He says Cipla brand, and it's uroxetrol. He's sitting here.
No, listen to me, ma'am.
It's not a
Uroxetrol, I understand, but what's the longevity product we're talking about to compare?
Oh, I'm sorry. Prostate, I guess. Prostate.
A Prostate. Is that a longevity product?
It's one of the pollen burst.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not familiar with Prostate, so I can't really talk about it. Let me tell you the difference between a drug and a supplement. Do you have the Prostate in front of you?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what's in it? Because I'm not really familiar.
I can pull that up real quick.
Okay, so let me just tell you generally, while Rebecca's pointing that out, let me just tell you generally the idea, Lisa. And this is very important. I take it, I haven't talked to you before. So are you new in longevity, or have you been around for a little bit?
New, basically.
New, okay, gotcha. So this is perfect. This is perfect. Okay, because that's a really good question. Why drugs and why supplements not drugs? Why drugs not supplements? What's the difference? Drugs, and I'm going to be very clear here, and you can tell your doctor that the pharmacist said this. Drugs poison the body, period. End of story. Now, the argument is, well, we're poisoning it to make it better. You know, you can use your common sense to think, to determine whether poison makes the body better, but that's the thing. That's the thinking.
Okay.
Drugs do not poison. I'm sorry, nutrition does not poison the body. Nutrition supports the body. However, drugs are much more powerful than nutrition, much more potent than nutrition. Nutrition is kind and gentle. Did you ever see Star Wars, Lisa?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
Who's more potent, your grandmother or Darth Vader? Who's more powerful, Darth Vader or grandma? Who loves you more, Darth Vader or grandma?
Yep.
Who do you want to hang out with more, Darth Vader or grandma? Drugs are powerful. There's no getting around it. But they're Darth Vader. They're evil. Grandma's not so powerful, but she loves you. She'll nurture you. She's kind to you. So the question is, do you want Darth Vader, power, or do you want grandma, love and nurturing? Does that make sense? You follow me?
Yes.
Now, the doctors will say, we want power. That's how they look at it. And look, I'm not arguing. That's their opinion. And if you go to a doctor, you're going to get doctored. And that's just how it is. I can't debate that. I'm giving you my opinion. I don't want Darth Vader, and I don't want to be doctored. Now, the fact of the matter is, when you doctor something, I forget the term doctor, the medical term doctor, just use the term colloquially. When you doctor something, is that a good thing? If you go to court and say, here's the evidence, judge, it's doctored. Is that a good thing, Lisa? If you go to the IRS and say, here's my taxes, IRS, they're doctored. Is that a good thing? No, because to doctor means to commit a fraud. And so you say, oh, what? Wait a minute. I love doctors. Doctors are great. You know, my doctor told me that. They're wonderful, right? You never hear that? I know I've told this before, but it always cracks me up. I always crack myself up, so maybe you'll laugh too. There's a comedian named Emo Phillips. Phyllis, you ever hear Emo Phillips?
Not that I'm aware of.
Emo Phillips had this funny way of talking. He was a comedian. He goes, I used to think my brain was my most important organ. And then I remembered what was telling me that. Capiche? It's like, who's telling us the doctor's great? The doctor, not him personally, but the medical model is deifying itself, and we believe it. So the fact of the matter is, your husband has a problem. He's not fixing his problem with a drug. He's doctoring his problem. He's hiding his problem. He's masking his problem. He's pretending, not him, but the body is pretending that there's no problem. On the other hand, nutrition, and I'll tell you, and the Prostate is not really nutrition as I'm looking at the ingredients here. The Prostate is homeopathic. Is that right? Am I reading that correctly? It's a homeopathic. I think.
Well, it has the flower
pollen extracts. That doesn't qualify as nutrition. That's not the mighty 90 nutrients. Let me help you, Lisa, or help your husband with his prostate problem. Okay? Is he there listening?
No.
Okay, so let me tell you. You can tell him.
Deficit.
Okay, no worries. The prostate problem he has is BPH, correct? Benign prostatic hypertrophy. Is that right? Did they say that?
You know, I'm not aware of that. I'm sorry.
Well, that's typically the problem with prostate. If it's not cancer, it's BPH, benign prostatic hypertrophy. Hypertrophy means it's growing a lot. Hypertrophy. That means there's a lot of growth. Basically, it's swelling. It's swollen. It's growing too much. It's inflamed.
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
The problem is the inflammation.
Okay.
The problem is the inflammation. The problem is the inflammation. So, does it make sense so far? Because I'm working here.
Yes.
Lisa,
sure. You're doing
so
good.
then what causes the inflammation? That's the problem everywhere. BPH is arthritis of the prostate. Arthritis is BPH of the joints. It's the same thing. It's just a different place. Am I making sense here?
Yes, you are.
When you have inflammation, it doesn't matter where it is from a treatment point of view, from a reversal point of view. It matters that it is. Everybody out there, listen to this. This is so important. We want to go to the we want to go to the endocrinologist and the osteopath and the OBGYN and the urologist and all these different specialists to deal with the same problem because it's occurring in a different part of the body. It doesn't matter where it's occurring. It matters that it's occurring. So your husband is inflamed. Okay? So what's inflammation? Inflammation is the body's response to attack. It's a defensive response. So your husband presumably is in his 60s, right? Or 70s maybe, correct?
No, he's older.
Okay, so he's even older. So he's had plenty of time to attack. And the way we live, we attack our bodies daily. The most prominent attack when it comes to inflammation is attack of the fats, the fatty part of the body. Prostate is a fatty gland. So when the fats are attacked, it's very common for them to become inflamed. Whether those fats are in the eyes, or whether those fats are in the skin, or whether those fats are in the heart, or whether those fats are in the prostate. So his body has been under attack and now it's inflaming. So we got to stop the inflammation and protect it from, we got to stop the inflammation and protect it from the inflammation. The way you do that is with nutrition. Now you can go Darth Vader and poison the body. That's fine. And I'm not arguing and I'm not debating the doctor. That's their strategy. That's what they do. I say it's much kinder and gentler to eliminate the assault, which is going to be toxic fats, French fries, pizza, fried fats of all kinds, everything we love. Fried fats are a death knell to the prostate. So avoiding fried fats and using good fats to replace those, particularly omega fats, omega-3 fats especially. So I would be getting on the ProstFX. This is what I would do. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just telling you what I would do or what I would suggest. The ProstFX, the Mighty 90, the Healthy Start Pack for sure. That's the Mighty 90 Essential Nutrients. But then also the ProstFX. And then also the second major inflammatory attack that's associated with the prostate comes from sugar. And Rebecca can tell you, because she just wrote a book on it, that one of the symptoms of metabolic syndrome, which is a sugar issue, is prostate disease, like BPH. So going low sugar, ketogenic, paleo, and using the sweeties and the healthy blood sugar pack, treating himself like a diabetic, even if he hasn't been diagnosed as such. And that's the second strategy I would do. So Healthy Start Pack, that's the bottom line. The first strategy is good fats. Make sure you're getting good fats and staying away from bad fats. And good fats mean omega fats, as well as vitamin E, which is very important for the prostate, as well as zinc and selenium, which are minerals, but they're processed through the fatty system of the body. And they're also very important for the prostate. Saw palmetto does have some phyto plant nutrients, or phytochemicals, we'll say. They're not really nutrients, but phytochemicals that can protect the prostate, but they're not in the same order in terms of potency. They're not in the same order of magnitude as the nutrients, but that won't hurt you. Now, all of this is compared to the drugs you're taking, which do not affect the prostate. There's no drugs that will affect the prostate. What they do is, or I should say, that will improve the prostate. There's drugs that will affect the prostate, but not improve the prostate. What you're taking, or your husband's taking, is for the nerves and the muscles that relax the prostate so that urine can flow through it. Prostate wraps around the tube where urine flows through, and when it becomes swollen, it kind of cramps it up. The drugs relax everything. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. All right. So you can go any way you like, but personally, I'm going the nutritional route. Let me just tell the Bible story one time because I love that story. Lisa, I don't know if you heard me tell that story. So, Moses didn't get to go to the promised land, right, Lisa? Is Lisa still there?
Yeah, she's muted. Go ahead.
Moses didn't get to go to the promised land. He took the children of Israel out of Egypt, but he didn't get to go to the promised land. Why? Because Moses did something he shouldn't have done. The children of Israel were complaining and bitching and moaning. Oh, we want to be in Egypt. Why did you take us out of Egypt? We had food and we had water. And so Moses goes to God and says, look, they're complaining. They need water. And God says, go to that rock and ask the rock for water. And Moses was having a bad day. He was upset. And instead of asking the rock, he hit the rock. He took a stick and he beat the rock. And he got water. He got water. But God said, I told you to ask the rock, not to beat the rock. And so because you hit the rock, you don't get to go to the promised land. And what drugs do, to answer your question, the first question you ask, is they hit the rock. They beat the rock. We want to ask the rock. We want to talk nicely to the rock. This idea of poisoning the body to make it better, while it does have applications in emergencies, it doesn't do us any good when it comes to chronic long-term degenerative diseases, because not only does it not solve the problem, it usually makes things worse.
All right, Pharmacist Ben, I know you have a hard stop, as I do too. But can you
Thank you
answer
so much.
anemia real quick?
Can I what?
Can you answer a question on anemia real
Yes.
quick?
Well, that I don't know if I can do it real quick, but I'll try. What's the question?
Okay, so Jill has an individual she's working with. She's anemic, and she's asking for vitamin D. But would vitamin D help correct anemia?
It won't help directly. I mean, I don't see how it would help directly, but it's part of the mighty 9 essential nutrients. Anemia is simply a generic word that refers to the fact that the blood has less hemoglobin or less red blood cells that carry oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of reasons for that. You could have the most common, the most common strategy, if you go to the doctor with anemia, is they'll give you iron, because they say iron deficiency causes anemia, but it could be a lot of things. It could be B12 deficiency. It could be folic acid deficiency. Any chronic disease can cause anemia. Anemia is like a generic symptom of chronic diseases, of inflammatory conditions, of general inflammation. You could be losing blood. You could have an ulcer of some kind you don't know. That could cause anemia. You could have issues with distorted blood cells because you're not getting the right kinds of fats, or you have inflammatory factors in the blood, and the distortion in the red blood cells can cause them to be destroyed prematurely. So there's all kinds of anemia is like a generic symptom. It's not like it's a disease. You understand? It's not a disease. It's a generic symptom that can be associated with a lot of different things. So vitamin D is not going to directly help, but it's not going to hurt. There's more important things. I'd want to know what else is going on in the body. Remember, if you have a painting, I know I'm repeating myself all the time here, but it's important. Repetition is reinforcement. If you have a painting and you have a dot in the middle of the painting, that doesn't mean anything to you. But if you have a dot and then you have another splash and then you have another line here, all of a sudden a river starts to emerge. Remember Bob Ross? It's the Bob Ross guy. You put a line here and a line there, and all of a sudden you see a river and a mountain. You have to have multiple data points in order to form a picture of what's happening. Once you get multiple data points, a picture starts to emerge. With just one dot in the middle of your canvas, that could be anything. I have no idea what that is. Anemia is a dot in the middle of the canvas. But if he says, oh, I have some digestive health issues. Oh, I got a prostate problem. Oh, I get frequent colds. Oh, I get rashes. Now a picture starts to emerge and we can start to figure out what's going on. Just anemia is a dot in the middle of the canvas. That could be due to a lot of things.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Pharmacist Ben Fuchs. I know we had a lot of hands, so maybe next time we'll just do questions.
Just questions. Just questions next time.
Just questions next time. Fantastic. Well,
thank you, everybody.
So much, everybody. Thank you, Pharmacist Ben. Have a fabulous weekend.
Well,
and
bye, everybody.
If I could get my co-host up on the screen with me, I could not do this without them. They work so hard. They have been so diligent and supportive and continuing to bring the message even when I'm not here, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And that's part of a community. Folks, when you've got a community, it doesn't take one person doing everything. It's everybody working together and keeping the message going. So we have with us today, of course, Pharmacist Ben, the best chemist I've ever met. We have myself, they say the Boss Dukes. Okay. Ruth Ellen, our organizer, who's not here with us today. We have AJ Technoman. We have Phyllis, the Doc Pioneer. We have Marilyn, Speedy Fingers. We have Albert, the Warden. We have Haley, the Marketer. And I think I saw Coach Rod on as well, the Motivator. Folks, if you want to be part of something bigger than yourself, and bring your talents to the table. Make sure that you get back with the person that shared this program with you, because that could be opening a door to a whole new world in a very positive way, which is why I'm moving. So thank you so much for joining us here today, Phyllis, Kaylee, Marilyn, Albert, AJ, doing so much in the background. You know, folks, this program is a resource to an amazing community. So if you heard something and you want more information about it and you were referred to this program by somebody specific, or you're working with somebody already within the longevity family, make sure that you get back with them. They are going to be your point of contact. Now, if you've never spoken to anybody about longevity, Pharmacist Ben, Dr. Wallach, our show, feel free to give our call team a call at 855-949-3377. Again, 855-949-3377. My name is Becca Dukes. Thank you so much for investing this time into you and your health and getting information to help yourself be the best that you can be on so many different levels. Go to dailywithdoc.com to find more information about Good Foods, Bad Foods list, our past episodes. And also, if you're not working with somebody, we do have a store there where you can find the products that were mentioned on today's program and any of our programming here on Daily with Doc and Becca. We will see you next week. Have a fantastic and fabulous weekend. And I know we're not going to be here Monday, but check in and we'll catch you on the rest of the days. If you're out on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, any of the different apps, thank you for being here. And we do have people that are watching the chat there. So if you have questions or comments, feel free to use that as well. Until next time, bye for now. Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. This program is for educational purposes only. The statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Testimonials are shared as individual experiences of the individual sharing their testimony. Results vary and may not be typical. We do not make any claims regarding health or income. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We are honored to have a founding father of the science of epigenetics guiding us with the best options to obtain or maintain optimal health, Dr. Joel Wallach.